Hello and welcome to the English Globe. I'm Adam, and I'm here with Julia for another deep and meaningful conversation. Today, we're talking about one of the most important events in South Asian history, how Pakistan and Bangladesh separated. But before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow and reach more listeners around the world.
Yes, and we would love to hear from you. Please tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what your thoughts are on today's topic. Have you heard about the Pakistan-Bangladesh separation before? Do you have any family connections to these events? Your opinions matter, and we want to build a community where we learn from each other.
So, let's go back in time to 1947. When British rule in India ended, two countries were created, India and Pakistan. Pakistan was formed as a homeland for Muslims, and it had two parts, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. West Pakistan is what we now call Pakistan, and East Pakistan later became Bangladesh. The two regions were separated by more than 1,000 miles of Indian territory.
From the start, it was a strange setup. The two wings of Pakistan were supposed to be one country, but they had very different cultures, languages, and lifestyles. The people of West Pakistan mainly spoke Urdu and Punjabi. In contrast, the majority in East Pakistan spoke Bengali and had deep cultural roots in the region that is now Bangladesh.
Even though the religion was the same, Islam, the identity of the two regions was not. Bengali people in the East were proud of their language, poetry, and traditions. But the leaders in West Pakistan wanted Urdu to be the only national language. This decision caused anger and protest in East Pakistan, where people felt their culture was being disrespected.
The language issue was just one problem. There were also major political and economic differences. Even though East Pakistan had more people, most government power was in the West. Important decisions were made in cities like Islamabad and Rawalpindi, while Dhaka, the capital of East Pakistan, was often ignored by the central government.
Economically, East Pakistan was also unhappy. The region produced a lot of jute, which was one of the country's top exports at the time. Yet the money earned from jute did not help the people in the East. Roads, schools, hospitals, and factories were mostly built in the West, and this led to a growing sense of unfair treatment among Bengalis.
So what you had was a country divided not just by land, but by identity, language, and power. Many people in East Pakistan began to feel like second-class citizens. They were part of the same country, but they did not feel heard or respected. The government's efforts to keep the country united actually made the divisions worse.
These early years after independence are very important. The seeds of separation were planted in the 1950s and 1960s. While the government tried to promote a single national identity, many Bengalis held on to their culture, language, and political demands. Over time, their desire for equality turned into a desire for independence.
We'll explore that journey step by step in this podcast. But remember, we are not here to take sides. Our goal is to understand history through facts and real events. We believe that by learning the past, we can better understand our present and future. And this story has important lessons about unity, leadership, and human rights.
As we continue this series, we'll explore the language movement, political unrest, and finally, the war that led to Bangladesh's independence. But for now, we hope this background gives you a clear picture of how different the two parts of Pakistan were. These differences did not start in 1971. They were there from the beginning.
So once again, if you're enjoying this episode, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the English Globe. We're here every week with new stories from history, politics, and culture, shared in simple English for learners around the world. Tell us in the comments what you already knew and what you learned today.
Welcome back to the English Globe. This is section 2 of our special series on the separation of Pakistan and Bangladesh. In our last episode, we introduced the historical background, how two regions, West and East Pakistan, were joined under one flag, but were very different in many ways. Now we move forward to understand how tensions grew deeper between them in the early years after independence.
From the beginning, it was clear that the union between West and East Pakistan was not equal. Though the two regions made up one country, power was concentrated in the West. Most government offices, military leadership, and national institutions were based in West Pakistan. East Pakistanis, despite being more in number, had little influence over national decision-making.
One of the biggest sources of tension was language. After independence, Pakistan's leaders decided to make Urdu the sole national language. But the majority of Pakistanis actually spoke Bengali, especially in East Pakistan. For them, this decision felt like an attack on their identity. Why should they be forced to give up their mother tongue?
This wasn't just about words. Language is deeply connected to culture and pride. By choosing Urdu, the central government sent a message that Bengali culture was less important. People in East Pakistan protested, asking for Bengali to be recognized as an official language. But instead of listening, the government pushed back and ignored their demands.
Another issue was economic injustice. East Pakistan generated a large part of the country's revenue, especially through jute exports. Jute was known as golden fiber and was in high demand globally. But the money made from this industry didn't return to East Pakistan. Most of it was spent on projects and development in the western part of the country.
The inequality became clear in everyday life. Roads in East Pakistan were in poor condition. There were fewer hospitals, fewer universities, and fewer factories. Meanwhile, West Pakistan was modernizing quickly. It felt to many people in the East that their labor and resources were being used to enrich others while their own communities remained poor.
And politically, East Pakistanis had very little power. In the first years after independence, most key positions, president, prime minister, army chief, and foreign minister, were held by leaders from West Pakistan. This lack of representation increased the frustration of East Pakistanis who believed they were being treated as second-class citizens.
In 1954, elections were held in East Pakistan's provincial assembly. The United Front, a coalition of Bengali political parties, won a major victory over the ruling Muslim League. This was a clear message from the people. They wanted more control over their own affairs. But the central government dissolved the United Front's ministry soon after.
This move shocked many and further fueled the belief that the central government didn't respect democratic decisions from East Pakistan. Every time the people tried to express their will through elections or protests, they were either ignored or punished. This pushed young students and local leaders to start organizing grassroots movements for greater autonomy.
By the late 1950s, the situation became even more complex. Pakistan came under military rule. General Ayub Khan took power in a coup and ruled as a military dictator. His government focused on building strong ties with the United States and improving infrastructure in the West, but East Pakistan remained largely neglected.
During Ayub Khan's rule, many East Pakistanis felt even more excluded. His speeches, policies, and economic programs were centered around West Pakistan. Despite East Pakistan being more populous, it was clear that the political elite in the West saw themselves as the center of the nation and viewed the East as less capable or important.
This attitude was visible in how the media portrayed Bengali politicians and culture. Newspapers and radio often described Bengali leaders as emotional or disloyal, while leaders from the West were praised as visionary and strong. This divide in perception only made the people of East Pakistan feel more isolated from their own country.
Let's not forget that travel and communication between the two wings of Pakistan were also difficult. You had to cross over Indian territory, and the flights were expensive and rare. Many citizens of West Pakistan had never even visited the East. This lack of interaction made it easier for stereotypes and misunderstandings to grow.
So to summarize, West and East Pakistan were one country in name, but in practice, they were living very different realities. East Pakistan was more populated, more culturally rich, and economically productive, but had less political and economic power. This unequal relationship was not sustainable, and the cracks began to show very early.
The 1960s would bring even more challenges, especially with the rise of student protests, the cultural revival in East Pakistan, and the political awakening led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. But it's important to understand that the roots of the separation were not sudden. They were planted in the early years through repeated injustice and inequality.
As we continue this journey, we want to remind our listeners that our goal is to explore this story with respect for both sides. Millions of people suffered due to decisions made by a few powerful leaders. The pain of separation still lives in memories, and history must be handled with care and balance.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on this section. Were you aware of how early the tensions between East and West Pakistan began? Let us know in the comments. And again, if you're enjoying this podcast, please like this video and subscribe to the English Globe for more stories told in clear and simple English. By the early 1950s, the divide between East and West Pakistan had started to deepen, and one of the clearest signs of that divide was the language issue. For the people of East Pakistan, Bengali was not just a language. It was part of their soul, their poetry, their songs, and their identity. But for the central government in West Pakistan, Urdu was seen as the symbol of unity, the language that could tie all Pakistanis together under one national culture.
The problem was that the majority of people in Pakistan, about 56%, spoke Bengali. Yet, the government refused to recognize Bengali as one of the national languages. In 1948, just 1 year after independence, Pakistan's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, declared that Urdu and only Urdu would be the state language of Pakistan. That statement caused shock and anger across East Pakistan, especially among students and intellectuals.
In Dhaka, students immediately began to organize protests and rallies. They believed the decision was unfair and ignored the reality of the country's population. Why should the language spoken by the majority be pushed aside? Why should their poetry, literature, and culture be treated as less important? The students' message was clear. Bengali must be recognized as an official language alongside Urdu.
Tensions rose steadily between the people and the government. In early 1952, the situation reached a boiling point. On February 21st, students at Dhaka University planned a peaceful protest to demand their linguistic rights. But the government had banned public gatherings. When students still came out to demonstrate, the police responded with force. Several students were shot and killed by the police in front of the university.
The names of those students, Salam, Rafiq, Barkat, and Jabbar, became symbols of sacrifice. Their deaths shocked the entire region and sparked a wave of protests across East Pakistan. People poured into the streets, not only to mourn the students, but to demand justice. What began as a language protest now turned into a larger movement for respect, recognition, and rights.
The government tried to control the situation through arrests and censorship, but the people's voices only grew louder. Artists began writing poems, singers composed songs, writers filled newspapers and magazines with emotional essays. The Bengali language movement was not just political anymore. It had become cultural and deeply personal for every Bengali family.
This moment changed the course of history. For the first time, the people of East Pakistan saw that their identity could not be erased by government orders. They realized that standing up together gave them power. The language movement became the foundation for future political struggles. It taught people that peaceful protest, unity, and cultural pride could bring about real change.
It's important to remember that this was not a call for separation, at least not yet. At this stage, the people of East Pakistan were still trying to find their place within a united Pakistan. They didn't want to break the country apart. They simply wanted to be heard, to be treated equally, and to see their language and culture respected by the state.
Eventually, in 1956, after years of pressure, the government accepted Bengali as one of the official languages of Pakistan, alongside Urdu. This was a major victory for the movement. But the pain from those early years, especially the bloodshed in 1952, left deep scars in the hearts of many Bengalis. They never forgot the price that was paid for the right to speak their own language.
The impact of the movement didn't stop there. It shaped the thinking of an entire generation. Young activists who had marched in 1952 later became political leaders. One of the key voices that grew louder in the years ahead was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. He would soon become the most important leader in East Pakistan, and later, the father of Bangladesh.
Another powerful result of the language movement was the birth of a unique Bengali nationalism. The people began to see themselves not just as East Pakistanis, but as a separate group with their own identity. They realized that if their language, their votes, and their rights could be denied, then maybe they needed more than equality. They needed autonomy.
Internationally, the events of 1952 didn't get much attention. But today, the world recognizes the importance of this movement. In fact, February 21st is now celebrated as International Mother Language Day by the United Nations. This day honors the right of all people to speak and preserve their mother tongues, and it all started in Dhaka with those brave students.
This also reminds us that freedom does not always begin with guns or battles. Sometimes it begins with words, spoken, written, or sung. The fight for language rights in East Pakistan is proof that culture and identity can be powerful tools of resistance. It shows how human dignity often begins with something as simple as the right to speak your own language.
Today, the martyrs of the language movement are remembered in Bangladesh with great respect. There is even a monument in Dhaka called the Shaheed Minar, which honors those who died on February 21st, 1952. Every year, thousands of people gather there to pay tribute, laying flowers and singing songs of unity and remembrance.
So, the language movement was more than just a protest. It was the beginning of a long journey. It taught the people of East Pakistan that their voice mattered, that their identity was worth protecting. And while the government tried to silence them, history shows us that truth and courage can never be silenced forever.
If you're listening right now, we'd love to know your thoughts. Had you heard about the Bengali language movement before? What does it mean to you to be able to speak your mother tongue freely? Please share your ideas in the comments section. We'd love to read them and discuss with you.
And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the English Globe if you haven't already. We create these long-form podcasts to help learners like you understand the world in simple English. Your support means everything to us. The language movement awakened a deep sense of political consciousness in East Pakistan. Throughout the 1950s, small waves of protest and disappointment built up into something much bigger. By the time the 1960s arrived, the people of East Pakistan were no longer asking for small changes. They were demanding political rights and greater control over their own destiny. The decade was about to become one of the most important in the lead-up to the separation.
At the start of the 1960s, Pakistan was under the rule of General Ayub Khan. He had come to power through a military coup in 1958, ending the brief experiment with parliamentary democracy. Ayub Khan believed in centralized control and a strong presidency. He presented himself as a modernizer and reformer, but his rule was marked by heavy censorship and the suppression of dissent, especially in East Pakistan.
Under Ayub Khan's leadership, the political gap between the two wings widened. His policies heavily favored West Pakistan. Economic development was visible in cities like Karachi and Lahore, where modern roads, factories, and schools were built. But in East Pakistan, people saw very little progress. Their towns remained underdeveloped, their schools overcrowded, and their infrastructure weak.
Even though East Pakistan had a larger population, it continued to be underrepresented in the central government. The civil service, military, and top political positions were mostly filled by West Pakistanis. This imbalance wasn't just unfair, it made East Pakistanis feel like outsiders in their own country. They were told they were part of the nation, but their voices were ignored.
As inequality deepened, a new political leader began to rise in East Pakistan. His name was Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, often called Mujib. He was charismatic, deeply rooted in Bengali culture, and committed to the cause of East Pakistani rights. In the early 1960s, Mujib began organizing protests and speaking out against the central government's policies.
Mujib was a founding member of the Awami League, a political party that would soon become the most powerful voice in East Pakistan. While other politicians tried to balance between loyalty to Pakistan and regional interests, Mujib made it clear: East Pakistan must have more control over its economy, its politics, and its future. He didn't call for independence yet, but he called for real autonomy.
In 1966, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman introduced his famous six-point program. This was a bold list of demands meant to give East Pakistan more control. The 6 points included things like separate currencies or separate fiscal systems, control over trade and foreign exchange, and the right for provinces to raise their own taxes. These demands shook the political landscape.
The reaction from West Pakistan's leadership was harsh. They saw the six-point program as a direct threat to national unity. Mujib was arrested and accused of treason. He spent time in jail, and his political party faced strong pressure from the government. But instead of breaking the movement, the crackdown only made Mujib more popular. People began to see him as the only leader who could truly stand up for their rights.
Meanwhile, a major disaster hit East Pakistan in 1965. The war between India and Pakistan broke out over the Kashmir region. But even during wartime, East Pakistanis felt left out. The war was fought entirely on the Western Front, and East Pakistan was left undefended. People began to wonder, if we are truly part of this country, why are we not being protected?
That same year, Ayub Khan signed a peace treaty with India in Tashkent. The people of East Pakistan were never consulted. Once again, major national decisions were made without their input. Many began to feel that Pakistan was functioning more like two separate states already, one with power and privilege, and the other with population and pain.
In response, the student movements in Dhaka and other cities grew stronger. University campuses became centers of political discussion and planning. Students, poets, writers, and activists worked together to organize rallies and demand justice. They were not afraid anymore. They were ready to build a new future where East Pakistan would no longer live in the shadow of the West.
In 1969, a wave of massive protests broke out across Pakistan, fueled by economic problems, political frustration, and public anger at Ayub Khan's dictatorship. People from both East and West Pakistan joined the protests, but the demands were different. In the West, people wanted democracy. In the East, people wanted autonomy.
Eventually, Ayub Khan was forced to resign. He handed power to another military leader, General Yahya Khan. Yahya promised free elections and a return to democracy. This gave people some hope. For the first time in years, it seemed that East Pakistan would have a chance to choose its own future through the ballot box, not through bullets.
But even as elections were being planned, the mood in East Pakistan was changing. The people no longer trusted promises from Islamabad. They wanted real power. They wanted leaders who spoke their language, understood their needs, and respected their culture. They didn't want charity. They wanted equality.
The 1960s were a turning point. The decade began with military rule and ended with mass protests and a political awakening in East Pakistan. The people had changed. They were no longer waiting patiently for justice. They were organizing, voting, and dreaming of a better life. And at the center of it all stood Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the man who would soon become the voice of a new nation.
If you've made it this far into our podcast, thank you. It's not an easy story to hear, but it's an important one. Do you think political and economic inequality can destroy a country from within? Have you ever witnessed unfair power structures in your own country? Let us know in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts.
Please remember to like this episode and subscribe to the English Globe. We are here to bring you real stories from history, politics, and culture in simple English, so you can learn more, speak better, and think deeper. And your feedback means the world to us.
Next, we'll move into the year 1970, a year of hope and heartbreak. We'll talk about the elections that changed everything, the devastating cyclone that tested the government, and the final push toward confrontation.
As we continue to unfold the real story behind the separation of Pakistan and Bangladesh, let's now talk about what happened after 1947, when Pakistan was created with two wings, West Pakistan and East Pakistan. These two parts of the country were separated by more than 1,600 kilometers of Indian territory. Despite being one nation, the political and economic systems did not function equally. From the very beginning, East Pakistanis felt ignored and sidelined.
That's true, Adam. While East Pakistan had a larger population, the power was centered in West Pakistan. The federal government, military, and bureaucracy were mainly dominated by West Pakistani elites. East Pakistanis believed that their voices were not being heard in the political process. For example, most top positions in government and army were filled by people from the West. This imbalance made East Pakistanis feel politically powerless.
One major issue was the distribution of financial resources. East Pakistan earned a large share of foreign exchange for the country, especially through jute exports. However, the revenue generated from East Pakistan was not fairly returned to the region in terms of development. Most of the infrastructure, education, and industrial investments were concentrated in West Pakistan. This made East Pakistan fall behind in economic growth.
Exactly. The sense of injustice grew stronger as the years went by. The people of East Pakistan wanted more control over their own resources and policies. They demanded greater autonomy. But those in power, mostly based in the West, resisted these demands. They feared that giving more power to East Pakistan might weaken the unity of the nation. This disagreement over autonomy became a major source of political tension.
Let's not forget the role of language in this struggle. The 1948 decision to make Urdu the only national language created a major backlash in East Pakistan. Bengali was spoken by the majority, and people felt deeply hurt when their language was not given equal status. This sparked protests and eventually led to the famous language movement of 1952, where students were even killed during demonstrations.
Yes, the language movement was a turning point. It showed that the people of East Pakistan were ready to fight for their identity and rights. Over time, this movement planted the seeds of nationalism among Bengalis. The desire for equality turned into a desire for autonomy and eventually for independence. But before that happened, there were many political developments in the 1950s and 1960s that made the situation even worse.
The political scene was unstable during that time. Frequent changes in government, military coups, and the imposition of martial law made things worse. In 1958, General Ayub Khan took over power through a military coup and ruled for 10 years. His regime introduced policies that were seen as favoring West Pakistan. Meanwhile, East Pakistanis continued to feel like second-class citizens in their own country.
During Ayub Khan's time, opposition grew rapidly in East Pakistan. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, leader of the Awami League, became the voice of the Bengali people. His popularity rose because he stood for regional autonomy and justice for East Pakistan. By the end of the 1960s, political activism in East Pakistan was at its peak. People wanted a fair share in power and a system that respected their identity.
By 1969, Ayub Khan handed over power to General Yahya Khan. Yahya promised to hold democratic elections. This was seen as a chance for East Pakistan to finally get its voice heard. But the differences between the two wings of Pakistan had grown so wide by then that the elections would eventually spark a massive conflict. We'll explore that more in the next part of our podcast.
Yes, we're just getting into the heart of the story, but before we move on, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think East Pakistan was treated fairly in the early years after partition? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the English Globe, and tell us where you're listening from. Stay with us as we continue this important conversation.
The year 1970 was a turning point in the history of Pakistan and East Pakistan. It was the year of the first general elections held under General Yahya Khan's military rule. The elections promised to bring democracy back to the country after years of military control. People across the country were hopeful that these elections would finally give East Pakistan its rightful political power. The Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, was the dominant party in the East.
In the election, the Awami League won an overwhelming majority in East Pakistan, capturing 160 out of 162 seats allocated to the region in the National Assembly. This gave them an absolute majority in the entire 300-seat assembly, which meant they had the right to form the federal government of Pakistan. It was a historic moment, signaling a clear demand for political change and recognition of East Pakistan's rights.
However, the leaders in West Pakistan, especially President Yahya Khan and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the leader of the Pakistan People's Party, were unwilling to accept this result. They feared losing power and control over the country. Bhutto's party had strong support in West Pakistan, but failed to win any seats in the East. Political negotiations to transfer power to the Awami League began but soon failed.
As the political crisis deepened, the government postponed the first session of the National Assembly, which was supposed to meet in March 1971. This decision was seen by many in East Pakistan as a denial of their democratic rights. The tension between East and West Pakistan reached a breaking point. People in the East felt betrayed and angry at the refusal to recognize their electoral mandate.
During this period, a natural disaster struck East Pakistan, adding to the region's suffering. In November 1970, a powerful cyclone hit the coast, causing widespread destruction and loss of life. The Pakistani government's slow and ineffective response to the disaster angered East Pakistanis further, increasing feelings of neglect and alienation.
Political leaders in East Pakistan called for civil disobedience and protests. The Awami League intensified its demands for autonomy, and the people began organizing themselves for a larger struggle. The idea of separation started to take hold among many Bengalis, who saw independence as the only way to secure their rights and dignity.
The situation escalated dramatically in March 1971, when the Pakistani military launched Operation Searchlight, a brutal military crackdown aimed at suppressing the growing movement in East Pakistan. The operation targeted political leaders, students, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens. Thousands were killed, and many more were arrested or went missing.
This military action shocked the world and marked the beginning of a full-scale liberation war. East Pakistan declared independence, and the country we now know as Bangladesh was born amid bloodshed and sacrifice. The conflict drew international attention, with India eventually intervening in support of the Bangladeshi independence movement.
The 1970 elections and their aftermath were the final chapters in a long story of political, economic, and cultural conflict between East and West Pakistan. The denial of democratic rights and failure to address grievances pushed the people of East Pakistan to take the painful step of seeking complete independence.
We want to remind our listeners that this story is complex and full of human suffering on both sides. Millions of people were affected, and the consequences of these events are still felt today. Understanding this history helps us appreciate the importance of democracy, equality, and respect for all cultures within a nation.
If you have thoughts about the 1970 elections or the political crisis, please share them in the comments below. What do you think could have been done differently? How important is respecting election results in maintaining peace? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the English Globe for more detailed stories in simple English. After the tense political struggle following the 1970 elections, the situation in East Pakistan escalated dramatically. In March 1971, the Pakistani military launched a massive military operation called Operation Searchlight. Its goal was to suppress the growing movement for autonomy led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the Awami League. This operation marked a violent turning point in the history of the region.
Operation Searchlight began on the night of March 25, 1971. The military targeted major cities like Dhaka, Chittagong, and Khulna. Their forces attacked student dormitories, universities, political offices, and neighborhoods known for supporting the Awami League. Thousands of civilians, students, and activists were arrested or killed in the first few days alone.
The military's tactics were brutal. They used tanks, artillery, and gunships to control the population. Homes were destroyed, and entire neighborhoods were burned down. Intellectuals, professors, journalists, and political leaders were specifically targeted. Many were executed or disappeared during this period. The goal was clear: crush the spirit of the Bengali independence movement.
One of the most tragic aspects of Operation Searchlight was the scale of violence against ordinary civilians. Women and children were not spared. Reports from witnesses and survivors describe horrific human rights abuses, including mass killings and sexual violence. These acts left deep scars on the people of East Pakistan and fueled a desperate struggle for freedom.
Despite the violence, the people of East Pakistan did not give up. Instead, the crackdown united them even more. Underground resistance groups formed, and many Bengalis took up arms in what became the Liberation War. Ordinary citizens joined fighters to protect their homes and fight for their independence.
The military government of Pakistan insisted that their actions were necessary to restore law and order. They described the Awami League as a separatist and traitorous force. However, international observers and human rights organizations condemned the military's actions as a brutal crackdown against civilians demanding their rights.
News of the violence began to spread internationally, and the world started to pay attention. Refugees fled across the border into India, sharing stories of atrocities and calling for help. The humanitarian crisis became a major concern, and India faced increasing pressure to respond to the growing number of refugees and escalating violence.
Within East Pakistan, the military crackdown failed to crush the spirit of the people. Instead, it ignited a full-scale war for independence. On March 26, 1971, following the military operation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman declared the independence of Bangladesh. This declaration marked the beginning of a 9-month-long liberation war that would change the course of history.
The Liberation War was not just a military conflict. It was a fight for justice, identity, and human dignity. Millions of Bengalis participated in or supported the war effort. The conflict saw heroic acts of resistance, but also unimaginable suffering. It remains one of the most significant and tragic chapters in South Asian history.
As we remember this dark chapter, it's important to recognize the resilience of the people who endured Operation Searchlight and the Liberation War. Their courage and determination eventually led to the creation of an independent Bangladesh in December 1971. This victory came at a high cost, but it fulfilled the dream of self-determination for millions.
If you're listening today, please reflect on the human impact of these events. War and violence affect everyone: men, women, children, and families. Understanding history means acknowledging the pain as well as the hope. What lessons can we learn from Operation Searchlight about power, oppression, and resistance?
We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. What stands out most to you about this period? How can we better support peace and justice in today's world? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the English Globe if you want to explore more stories like this in clear and simple English.
The Bangladesh Liberation War soon caught the attention of neighboring India. India shared a long border with East Pakistan and was deeply affected by the conflict. Millions of refugees crossed into India, fleeing violence and destruction. This refugee crisis placed enormous strain on India's resources and economy. The Indian government faced growing pressure to respond to the humanitarian disaster unfolding on its doorstep.
India's leadership was sympathetic to the Bengali cause, but also cautious. The government, led by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, initially provided humanitarian aid and political support to the Bangladeshi independence movement. However, India was aware that open military involvement could escalate the conflict and lead to a full-scale war with Pakistan.
Meanwhile, the international community watched carefully. The Cold War was at its height, and Pakistan had strong alliances with the United States and China. India, on the other hand, had close ties with the Soviet Union. This global political backdrop complicated the situation, as major powers viewed the conflict through the lens of their own strategic interests rather than humanitarian concerns.
Despite the diplomatic complexities, the Indian government began training and supporting the Mukti Bahini, the Bengali guerrilla resistance fighters. These fighters conducted raids against Pakistani forces, sabotaged infrastructure, and gathered intelligence. Indian support played a critical role in strengthening the Bangladeshi liberation movement.
Tensions between India and Pakistan escalated quickly. In December 1971, after months of border skirmishes and attacks, India officially entered the war. The Indian military launched a coordinated attack on both the eastern and western fronts. This decisive move put tremendous pressure on Pakistani forces in East Pakistan.
The war was brief but intense. Indian and Bangladeshi forces fought together with determination and courage. The conflict ended on December 16, 1971, when Pakistani forces surrendered. This surrender marked the birth of Bangladesh as an independent nation. It was a historic moment celebrated by millions, but also a time of deep sorrow for lives lost.
International reactions varied. Some countries quickly recognized Bangladesh's independence, while others remained loyal to Pakistan. The United States, under President Nixon, maintained support for Pakistan, while the Soviet Union backed India and Bangladesh. This division reflected the broader Cold War rivalries shaping global politics at the time.
The birth of Bangladesh showed the complex interaction between local struggles and international politics. While the desire for independence came from the people of East Pakistan, the support and intervention of regional and global powers significantly influenced the outcome. This reminds us that history is often shaped by forces beyond the immediate conflict.
Today, India and Bangladesh maintain strong ties as neighboring countries. The Liberation War remains a foundational part of Bangladesh's national identity. However, it is important to remember the conflict's complexity and the many perspectives involved. Understanding these helps us appreciate the challenges of nation-building and diplomacy.
If you have questions or thoughts about India's role or the international politics of the 1971 war, please share them in the comments. How do you see the influence of global powers in local conflicts? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the English Globe to follow this story to its conclusion.
The end of the Liberation War in December 1971 marked a new beginning for Bangladesh, but also a time of great challenge. The country emerged as an independent nation after years of struggle and sacrifice. Yet, the war had left Bangladesh devastated. Cities were in ruins, millions were dead or displaced, and infrastructure was destroyed. The new government faced the enormous task of rebuilding a nation from the ground up.
Rebuilding Bangladesh meant not only physical reconstruction, but also healing deep social and psychological wounds. The trauma of war, loss of family members, and displacement had left scars on the population. Political leaders, including Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, had to unite a diverse population and create a stable government while addressing urgent humanitarian needs like food, shelter, and healthcare.
Meanwhile, Pakistan was also dealing with the aftermath of separation. The loss of its eastern wing was a huge blow to national pride and economic strength. West Pakistan, which became the new Pakistan, faced political instability, economic challenges, and the need to redefine its identity as a smaller nation. The trauma of the war and the loss influenced Pakistani politics and society for years to come.
In Bangladesh, the first years were marked by efforts to establish democracy, improve education, and develop the economy. International aid and support helped the country recover, but progress was slow. Challenges such as poverty, political unrest, and natural disasters tested the resilience of the new nation. Yet, the spirit of independence kept the people focused on building a better future.
Politically, Bangladesh experienced significant changes in leadership during the 1970s and 1980s. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, known as the father of the nation, was assassinated in 1975, which led to a period of military rule and political upheaval. Despite these challenges, Bangladesh continued to grow and eventually developed into a vibrant democracy.
On the other side, Pakistan worked to rebuild its international relationships and economy. It faced criticism for its role in the war and the treatment of Bengalis, leading to changes in military and civilian leadership. Over time, Pakistan focused on strengthening its own identity and addressing internal political and social issues.
The separation left deep wounds, but also lessons for both countries. It highlighted the importance of respecting cultural diversity, equitable governance, and the dangers of political exclusion. The story of Pakistan and Bangladesh reminds us that unity requires more than borders. It needs justice, respect, and understanding.
Today, Bangladesh is recognized as a developing country with a growing economy, rich culture, and a proud history of resilience. Pakistan remains an influential country in South Asia with its own complex history. Both nations share a past filled with struggle and hope, connected by language, culture, and history.
As we conclude this series, we want to thank you for joining us on this journey through a difficult but important part of history. Understanding the real story behind the separation helps us appreciate the value of democracy, human rights, and peace. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.
Where are you listening from today? What have you learned from this story? We would love to hear your opinions. Remember, history is not just about the past. It shapes our future. Thank you for listening to the English Globe. We look forward to bringing you more stories soon.
As we move deeper into the history of East and West Pakistan, one of the most defining issues that shaped their divide was the language controversy. In 1948, just a year after independence, Pakistan's founder, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, declared that Urdu would be the sole national language. This announcement sparked massive unrest in East Pakistan, where the majority of the population spoke Bengali.
Bengali wasn't just a spoken language. It was tied to the region's literature, music, education, and cultural identity. Forcing Urdu, a language spoken by a small percentage of the population, mostly in West Pakistan, felt like erasing the Bengali identity. Students and intellectuals in Dhaka, the capital of East Pakistan, led protests and demonstrations, demanding Bengali be recognized as one of the state languages.
The movement escalated in 1952. On February 21st, during a protest in Dhaka, police opened fire on student demonstrators. Several people were killed. This day is now remembered globally as International Mother Language Day. It marks a powerful moment in history, where people died defending their right to speak their own language. It cemented a sense of injustice and exclusion among Bengalis.
This language movement highlighted a broader issue: cultural and political centralization. Many in East Pakistan felt they were being ruled by an elite in West Pakistan who didn't understand or respect their traditions. The arts, media, and even school curricula were influenced heavily by West Pakistani perspectives. The cultural divide was growing deeper.
Another issue was economic disparity. While East Pakistan contributed a major portion of the country's foreign exchange through jute exports, most of the investments and development projects were directed towards West Pakistan. The Eastern Wing felt like a colony, exploited for resources, but ignored in national planning.
This created a sense of economic nationalism in East Pakistan. People began asking why their hard work and resources weren't benefiting their own region. Why were cities like Karachi and Lahore flourishing, while Dhaka and Chittagong remained underdeveloped? These questions weren't just about money, they were about dignity, identity, and fairness.
By the 1960s, the situation was tense. While the ruling elite in West Pakistan emphasized unity under Islam and Urdu, the people of East Pakistan were leaning toward Bengali nationalism. They weren't rejecting religion. They were asking for recognition, representation, and respect for their unique culture and contributions.
It's important to understand that this wasn't a conflict between two ethnic groups. It was a struggle between centralization versus autonomy, one identity versus many, imposition versus inclusion. The Bengali people were asking to be heard, not to break away, at least not initially.
The seeds of separation were planted not because of one single event, but due to years of cultural suppression, political neglect, and economic marginalization. The language issue was only the beginning, but it revealed how deep the differences really were. And yet, these differences could have been addressed had there been meaningful dialogue. The seeds of separation were planted not because of one single event, but due to years of cultural suppression, political neglect, and economic marginalization. The language issue was only the beginning, but it revealed how deep the differences really were. And yet, these differences could have been addressed had there been meaningful dialogue.
Sadly, instead of dialogue, there was denial. Instead of building bridges, walls were erected. The people in East Pakistan were labeled as troublemakers. Their demands were often dismissed as rebellious or even un-Islamic. But the truth is, their demands were rooted in the very spirit of self-determination that led to Pakistan's own creation in 1947.
Isn't it ironic? The very country that was formed to protect the rights of a religious minority in India was now failing to protect the linguistic and cultural rights of its own citizens. The Bengali movement wasn't a betrayal of Pakistan. It was a cry for inclusion, but it was a cry that kept falling on deaf ears.
Let's also not forget the emotional and psychological toll. Imagine living in a country where your language is devalued, your culture sidelined, and your aspirations ignored. Over time, such conditions don't just create discontent, they lead to a deep sense of alienation.
It's clear that by the end of the 1960s, East Pakistan had developed a distinct political consciousness. It was no longer just about language or economy, it was about who controls the future. And increasingly, East Pakistanis wanted to shape their own destiny. The seeds of that demand were already turning into a movement.
And that movement would take on political shape in the form of Awami League, led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. His calls for greater autonomy were not calls for separation, at least not in the beginning, but the refusal to accommodate even these basic demands would later push the country toward a painful and violent split.
As we reflect on this section, let's be careful not to simplify history. It wasn't just a West versus East issue. It was about the failure of a shared vision, the mistakes of leadership, and the importance of listening to people's voices. This story teaches us that unity without respect leads to resistance.
And for our listeners, we'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think the separation of East Pakistan could have been avoided? What lessons can modern nations learn from this episode? Please share your thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're listening from. As we reach the final part of our podcast, it's important to reflect on the human side of this historical chapter. Beyond politics, ideologies, and military actions, there were people, millions of ordinary men, women, and children who experienced pain, displacement, fear, and hope. The separation of East and West Pakistan wasn't just a geopolitical event. It was a human tragedy and a lesson in how communication breakdown, mistrust, and injustice can tear nations apart.
You're absolutely right, Julia. After the war ended in December 1971, Bangladesh began its journey as an independent nation. But the scars of war, especially the loss of life, the refugee crisis, and the suffering of the people, remained for years. The new country faced massive challenges, from rebuilding infrastructure to addressing economic collapse and dealing with the trauma of genocide and violence. Still, it was a moment of both liberation and uncertainty for the people of Bangladesh.
Meanwhile, in what remained of Pakistan, the defeat led to national introspection. The military's role came under heavy scrutiny, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto emerged as a key leader in reshaping Pakistan's politics. There was also an effort to redefine national identity. Many Pakistanis struggled to understand how such a painful rupture had occurred. The loss of East Pakistan left deep wounds, and it took decades for the country to come to terms with it politically and emotionally.
One of the major aftershocks was in the military structure and political direction of Pakistan. The belief in a strong, centralized state, largely controlled by the West Pakistani elite, was challenged forever. In the years after 1971, new movements for autonomy, such as those in Balochistan and Sindh, began to rise. It reminded the leadership that diversity within a nation cannot be ignored, suppressed, or governed without inclusive and fair systems.
Bangladesh, on the other hand, developed its own national identity. Bengali language, culture, and pride became central to the new state's narrative. While political instability followed in the early years, with coups and assassinations shaking the country, over time Bangladesh rebuilt itself. Today, it's one of the fastest-growing economies in South Asia. That journey was far from easy, but the people of Bangladesh showed incredible resilience and strength.
Looking back, this story isn't just about separation. It's about understanding. Understanding how colonial legacies, ethnic tensions, language rights, and economic injustice can explode if not addressed. It teaches us that national unity cannot exist without mutual respect. For both Pakistan and Bangladesh, 1971 became a turning point that reshaped South Asian history and left lessons for future generations.
Today, relations between the two countries are complex. While formal diplomatic ties exist, historical grievances remain. Generations in both nations have grown up with different narratives of what happened in 1971. That's why open dialogue, historical research, and honest education are essential. Understanding the full story can help both countries move forward with more empathy and cooperation.
At the end of the day, it's not just about what happened, but about what we choose to learn from it. The past is never easy, especially when it's filled with trauma. But facing it honestly, without hate or denial, helps in healing. Our hope is that one day, Pakistan and Bangladesh can work more closely, not just as neighbors, but as nations that share deep roots and cultural ties, despite their painful history.
Before we end today's episode, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this complex and emotional chapter in South Asian history? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're listening from and how you view the legacy of the 1971 war. Do you think reconciliation is possible between the two nations? We're always open to hearing diverse perspectives.
And if you found today's episode informative, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the English Globe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a deep conversation like this one. We're here to explore history with honesty, respect, and a global perspective.
Thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep your mind open. This is Julia.
And this is Adam signing off from the English Globe podcast. Take care.